All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's City Council regular meeting for Monday, June 2nd. We have two study sessions up for tonight. Up first is Director of Finance Kevin Engels here to present the monthly financial report. Good evening, Kevin.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Kevin Engels, Director of Finance. We're going to be reviewing the April 2025 General Fund Monthly Financial Report. We didn't present March's report yet. I've included it in the packet, but we won't review that since April's year-to-date. It will include all the same information. So we'll start with revenues. Overall, we're a third of the way through the year. Revenues are right at a third of budget, so we're on track there. Sales and use tax is down a little bit, about 1% compared to last year, and that's the trend we've seen over the last 12 to 14 months. Licenses and permits are up. We've had one big construction pull some permits. So, and there'll be a few more that come in on that same project. And overall, we're up just about 900,000 over last year. We're about 3.9%. So for expenditures, we're overall we're at 34.2%, right in line with where we were at this time last year, which was 34%. There are 3 departments that have some contracts that, excuse me, that they pay early in the year and don't continue to pay monthly. So those, they appear to be over budget, but they're really not. And that's the legislation, IT, and police. Everyone else is under budget or at budget. Once again, just about $900,000 over last year. So expenses and revenues are both tracking right along that 3.6 to 3.9%. The expenditures by category. The only item note here is the contractual services do look inflated. Once again, that's back to those departments that pay some of their contracts early in the year and not spread it out through the year. You'll notice that's about the same percentage where we were at last year. So operating surplus or deficit, we're at about a 1.2 million deficit, operating deficit, right in line with where we were last year at this time. Again, some of our expenses are front-loaded in the early part of the year. No changes to transfers. Those typically only happen at the beginning of the year. And your fund balance composition. We're far enough along in our 2024 audit that we're pretty certain that this is where we're going to end up at just about 19 million of total fund balance for the general fund. And an unassigned ending balance for 24 of 4.7 million. And then if you roll over to the 2025 column, we've got that operating deficit of 1.1 million, 1.2 million, and then your transfers for an ending fund total fund balance at the end of April of 15.5 million. And you see your restricted items there. Maintaining your 16.7% is $11.8 million unrestricted reserve. And that leaves a unassigned fund balance of 1.1 million. That is the April financial report.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Kevin, were you going to talk to the March as well, or should we just answer any questions regarding both here?
Oh, I'd be glad to answer the questions. We weren't going to cover the report separately just because April includes the year-to-date information.
I kind of figured as much. Perfect. Thank you so much, Kevin. Any questions for members of council? Go ahead, Member Russell.
Just curious why we missed the March financials.
We had it scheduled, and there was an agenda issue. I think it got bumped for something that was more pressing, so we decided to combine it. We're going to have this happen again with the May and June reports that we'll do in July, just because of scheduling, and that one will be somewhat because you guys have two weeks off. So
thank you.
The agendas are very busy.
All right, I appreciate that.
I think that was also the April 28th when we didn't have a quorum.
That's
right?
correct. That was part of it. Yes. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions from members of council? All right. Kevin, thank you very much for the presentation. All right. Moving on to the second item, we have Public Works, Finance, and the City Manager's Office, along with Energy Services Group, here to present the financing for the Comprehensive Municipal Energy Project.
Hello, Mayor. Hello, City Council members. I'm joined here, City Managers, Public Works, Finance, and our contractor who is online virtually, Energy Systems Group. We're going to be going over the proposed financing option for the Municipal Energy Project. But I'm going to hand it over to our contractor first to give a project overview refresher for council about what the financing is for. So I believe Niffy should be online.
Yes, please, someone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Technology is working for us for once. So good evening, Mayor and City Council, and thank you, Director Engels and Mel for inviting me to come along. I wanted to just give a brief recap of kind of what we've been doing. So we're looking at a comprehensive energy project to take a lot of our inefficient systems that we have throughout the city, whether it's lighting, envelope, or water, or HVAC, and we're using some upgrades to those that are going to provide us with energy savings that can then fund needed upgrades with HVAC, destratification fans, and utility management, and all of that combined also with solar photovoltaic upgrades, which are going to be really great for our project. I'm not certain if you can see the presentation that Director Engels is going to show later, but we're looking at, yep, there we go, perfect. So we're combining across the entire city on our facilities, looking at low cost, no cost energy savings measures that are going to balance out paying for more expensive upgrades that are needed throughout the city. And if we can go to the next slide, please. What we're looking at, I know we presented last year, a $6.75 million project. Through our process of competitive bidding and really working with different contractors and partners throughout the state, we've been able to bring that price down to $6.6 million. You will note that we did have some unfortunate news where we were expecting $750,000 in grant funding for electrification. That only came in at $250,000 following some cuts from the state, which were cascaded down from the federal government. But overall, we're still able to pay for our project, actually in a shorter time right now, 19 years, as opposed to 20. And our overall project cost is coming down. However, we do need to finance a little bit more against our energy savings. So just giving you that high level overview of, hey, we've looked at all of your facilities. We're hitting some of those really needed upgrades for HVAC, and we're able to pay for those through low cost, no cost items. So with that, I'll pass it back to Kevin.
Thank you for that. Kevin Engels, Director of Finance again. We're going to talk now about the actual financing piece of that you saw on that previous slide of about $3.9 million. We'll have a 20-year term is what we're proposing, and we're proposing to do that as a tax-exempt lease purchase, was what it's called. We're able to do that tax-exempt because we're a municipality. Much like if we were issuing bonds, we could do those tax-exempt. And that brings in a bigger pool of investors, specifically banks. So about $2.2 million of the improvements are going to be to the Malley Center, and our bond advisors and bond counsel have suggested that we tie a facility to this as the security for the financing. It gets us better terms when we go out to the market. So we're proposing that we use the Malley Center because they are getting the $2.2 million of improvements there. And if council agrees to move forward with that, we'll come back with an ordinance that has more specific details on maximum pricing and maximum interest rates that we'll use for the financing. So with that, we'll be glad to answer any questions you have.
Kevin, thank you very much for the presentation. Any questions from council? Go ahead, Member Russell.
So we are paying $2.5 million from our capital improvement fund, or where's that coming from?
Yeah, council approved that in the 2025 budget.
And so we're talking about financing $3.9 million for 19 years, really 20. What would happen, and I don't know what our mortgage payments are, if we just started using those payments that would be for mortgage and just started doing the projects and paying cash for them instead of encumbering the Malley Center?
Well, I think I'll maybe turn that over to our Public Works Director. Spreading it out over the 20 years is going to cause other issues with how soon we have to replace some of the equipment. We wouldn't be able to do it all in 1 year with cash. And so that's part of the issue.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Victor Rochelle, Director of Public Works. Councilman Russell, thank you for the question. What Kevin's kind of alluding to here on the project overview, this project is aiming to replace equipment that's already beyond its useful life and is set up to needing to be replaced. And we're able to use this project to replace it with more energy efficient units and projects. So the ability to implement all of this in that short time frame would be extremely difficult, given the scope of the projects and the number of sites and the magnitude at each location on the screen there.
And how much are we paying the company that's doing this? And do we still owe them more money for doing this?
They're under contract, and that's NIFI's company. It was formerly known as Year Out Energy. I'd have to get you the exact number, but it is in the contract that was approved by council.
So formerly known as Year Out Energy, did they change their name?
That's a great question. NIFI, can you speak to the name change?
Certainly. So again, if you're aware with Energy Systems Group, we had a really great opportunity where we were able to join with 3 other companies to give us a nationwide footprint. So Year Out Energy was based in Albuquerque, Mexico, really primarily focused in the Southwest, but we had a great opportunity to join with Energy Systems Group and with Pacific West Energy to give ourselves a nationwide footprint. And basically taking our team from 40 to 400 engineers and contract individuals who are able to provide you with even more service and better service at a deeper level.
So do you work for Year Out Energy, or do you own Year Out Energy?
No, ma'am. I work for Energy Systems Group, which acquired Year Out Energy.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That answers my questions.
Member Noonan-Camp.
Thank you
And
for
Member Ward.
Thank you for the presentation and the update on this project. I'm looking at slide 6, which is the project funding estimates, and looking at some of those key assumptions, the 4.4 interest, some of the utility costs. I'd like to better understand, the slide before this one, those key assumptions on the far left-hand side. I'd like to understand what happens if those assumptions don't prove true. What are the implications for that? And I'd also like to better understand what potential risks are associated with this approval, what those might be that we should be aware of.
So I'll speak broadly to it, and then I'll let NIFI jump in. So these assumptions are based on our consultants' experience in the market and are trying to take a conservative approach. We believe that the payback could potentially be quicker, so these numbers being slightly conservative in nature. I would say to your question about what happens if we don't hit those numbers, if we are missing them in a negative manner, it would draw out the payback timeframe. If we are aggressive and our numbers are conservative, then the payback would be sooner. NIFI, anything you want to add to that?
Sure. So we do a couple of things. So I'm not a financial advisor by law. I have to make sure I say that. But we are working with the city's financial advisors and the bond advisor. And what we've been told and what we've seen recently in the bond market is around that 4.4%. That's actually higher an interest rate than what we were told we should carry. We just want to be conservative as Dr. Rochelle had mentioned. And then we also use escalation rates for the cost of energy. And those come from the National Institute of Science and Technology to say, hey, here's what the inflation has looked like over the past few years. Let's project that up over the next 20 years. Nobody can predict the future, but we try to use a conservative number. And we also work with the Colorado Energy Office to make sure that the numbers that we're using for escalation and for interest rates are in line with what they're seeing across the industry.
That's helpful. So what I'm hearing is that the main risk is that if these numbers are off, it increases our payoff time. Is there any other risk that council should be aware of in the context of this decision?
There are, obviously no one can predict the future. If energy costs don't go up as high and as fast as what we put in our model, you actually have lower costs. And so that is a hedge against the future. But also if the energy rates go up faster than we put in our model, you're getting a higher cost avoidance. So you're saving more money. So there is a risk there associated with the escalation rates that we're putting in there. But in either case, you're either offsetting faster or you're not experiencing as much of an expense.
Okay, thank you.
And I should say the other thing is this is a guaranteed energy project. So if you don't save the energy, my firm is on the hook to pay you the difference in the dollars that you're not saving. So there is a guarantee associated with this project.
A very important point. Thank you so much.
Member Ward and then Member Wright.
I think this is a question for finance. I'm curious how a tax-exempt lease purchase or TELP differs from what we've traditionally referred to as a COP.
So the main difference is that the COP, it's not tied necessarily to trying to think of the proper word to say, but it's it's a certificate of participation. So you participate in the project. We're actually leasing equipment on this. So it's more like a traditional lease. It's a tax exempt because we're a municipality, but it's more of a traditional lease. COPs are a lease buyback where you get the money up front, you pay it off, and at the end you own the bit. Typically it's a building where COPs are used for. This is more specific to equipment.
So the item being financed differs, but the consequences of default are the same, effectively. We
Yes.
put up a building that we own now
Yes.
to take out debt, which would ordinarily require voter approval. But under the circumstance where we put a tabor clause and annual funding, we can draw that debt using an asset that the voters own as collateral for the debt.
Correct. Yes.
But if the financial situation changes significantly, which has happened in the past in a city near us, we would risk losing the Malley Center.
Yeah, that would have to be a very dire situation, and I don't think the city's ever defaulted on a payment. It's not impossible. I would say it's extremely low.
My guess would be that when that shiny new city hall was built in a city not far from us, they probably thought the same thing.
Well, hopefully this isn't the same scenario. This is a fairly small amount and very specific terms.
So what is the ultimate reason why we would not go to voters and ask them for their permission to draw this debt? Is it because we don't have to, or is it a timing issue?
I think it's timing. A lot of this equipment needs replaced now, and we don't have separate funding for that. To remember Russell's question earlier, we can't really spend. You take 20 years or 15 years, however much time it would take to cash finance that. Some of this equipment is going to be gone by then.
Okay, I think that's all of my questions. Thank you.
Member Wright.
Thank you. Excuse me. Why would we choose the Malley Center of all the properties that the city owns to put that up as collateral? Because basically that's what it is. I'm looking at all the buildings that the city owns. Broken T is pretty equal on the upgrades. So why would we not put Broken T up as collateral? Because they generate money where the Malley Center offers services, and I don't think they generate a whole lot of money other than to self-sustain. So I'm wondering about that.
So the Malley Center is getting the most improvements of all the facilities. Broken T is getting most of what's going in over there is solar panels. So it's not actually the building itself. There are also some considerations that since the golf course is run as an enterprise fund, it's a little bit different than how the Malley Center is part of the general government.
Okay, so when I'm looking at Broken T, it says the clubhouse and the Broken T maintenance. And when I look line for line, with the exception of maybe two, the Malley Center and Broken T are almost identical.
Mm-hmm.
So is the Malley getting solar panels also?
Thank you for the question. No, the Malley Center is not currently proposed to get solar panels. There are solar panels already on the roof there as part of the Amoresco contract. It's really the scope and magnitude. The Malley Center, given the age, Broken T2 has similar challenges, but the amount of upgrades when it comes to things like the building envelope, some of the D-strat fans, HVAC upgrades are a little more extensive in Malley. And while they're on the sheet here, and I apologize, I can go back in the slide deck here. The dots are there. The magnitude of the work at Malley versus Broken T is higher.
So are any of these buildings receiving anything? Is Malley Center the highest dollar amount of upgrades of everything on this slide?
I would need to confirm, but I believe so.
Okay.
The recreation center is the most dollar for
Okay.
dollar. However, 1.5 million of the 2.5 million going into the recreation center is solar PV. Whereas Malley, it's
building.
1 million is going towards the HVAC upgrades that are much needed because those systems are very close to failing. So that's so it's 1 million out of 1,150,000 that is HVAC upgrades at the Malley Senior Center.
And none of these upgrades between the two could be put in the GEO bond.
I don't know that I don't believe there was a discussion about including in the GEO bond. The GEO bond was focused primarily specifically on parks and rec upgrades to the facilities and not the actual building itself.
Okay. Thank you.
I think my question is going to be for Kevin or maybe for Niffy here, but going back to that project funding estimates slide, I'm actually more curious on the right-hand side, just because we've already talked about the electrification grant going down from 750 to 250. The line item that catches my eye is the IRA, and there's been talk about that being scrapped. So are there any concerns about the right-hand side in terms of those dollars?
I cannot be a financial advisor, but all of our financial advisors that I consult with have said we need to move forward as quickly as possible.
Okay.
And I think you asked this exact question the last time I was with City Council and we were approving this budget. We can't predict the future. What we've been hearing with the latest version of the bill that has been sent to the Senate is that if your projects are, that you have broken ground by August of this year, then you'll still be eligible for the Inflation Reduction Act. So I continue to say, let's move as quickly as possible to make sure that we're able to get the funds that are currently slated to be available for us.
Perfect. Nippy, you answered the question I was going to ask next, so in terms of the timing on this, so that's good to hear. Victor, just remind me again, all of the projects that we've identified outside of probably the solar PV, everything else is something that's been required as part of, or it's basically at its end of life, and so what this project is doing is really making the improvements to the equipment for all these facilities, correct?
That's correct. Especially on the equipment side, I would say the building envelope is one area that could maybe be looked at in both lights. You don't expect a building envelope to necessarily fail, but some seals go, and insulation can be replaced and upgraded, windows, doors, things like that. But the lion's share are things like the HVAC, the electrical. We've got transformer upgrades, efficiency upgrades in there, and equipment that is at or beyond use of life. Okay. And you'll notice that, sorry, I'll go back. Civic Center is not on the list. And we talked about that during previous presentations. We're very cognizant of kind of the question mark around what's going on and with City Center, Civic Center. And so we are currently not looking at any of these investments into this building at the moment.
Okay, perfect. All right, Victor, any other questions from members of council? Go ahead, Member Ward.
I don't have any questions. I do have some comments.
Sure, go ahead.
So I've been clear in the past on the way I feel about certificates of participation in particular, or drawing debt without voter approval. So I took a look at Tabor, just to make sure that I knew what I was talking about. Article 10, Section 20 of the Colorado Constitution, Paragraph 4. Now, I'll say there are stacks and stacks of case law on this. What is proposed here is unquestionably legal according to the Colorado Supreme Court. However, I think there is a way that we can do it that actually complies with not just the letter, but also the spirit of Tabor. Paragraph 4 says, starting November 4th, 1992, districts must have voter approval in advance for, and then sub B, except for refinancing district bonded debt at a lower interest rate or adding new employees to existing district pension plans, creation of any multiple fiscal year direct or indirect district debt or other financial obligation whatsoever without adequate present cash reserves pledged irrevocably and held for payments in all future fiscal years. So I'll point to our reserve and specifically our reserve policy and say, we do have this cash in the bank right now. It would draw down below what our reserve policy indicates we should have in reserve. But I'm not suggesting that we need to cash fund this. We could fund this with debt. But my proposal, in order to get my vote on this, would be we encumber the reserves for whatever amount of debt we draw in order to do the project in compliance with the requirements of Article 10, Section 20 of the Colorado Constitution. And also to give us a much more realistic picture of the city's financial position relative to its debt and reserves.
Thank you very much, Member Ward. Any further comments or questions from council? All right, Victor and team, Mel, Kevin, and Niffy, thank you very much for the presentation. It sounds like you would be back in front of us on the 23rd. I didn't hear any major objections to this, so it does sound like we want to at least move forward with the proposal come the 23rd, and then at that point, we'll obviously make a final decision. So,
Good, will do. Thank you.
all right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Niffy.
Was that another? I think that's it. So everyone, thank you very much. That was the 2 items for tonight for study session. We're going to take a 30-minute break. We'll re-adjourn at 7 o'clock for the start of the regular meeting. Thank you, everyone. All right, good evening, everyone. I call this meeting to order. If you're able to do so, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. City Clerk, if you could please take roll call.
Yes, good evening. Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Present.
Member Neunenkamp.
Present.
Member Prang. Oh, yep, sorry. Member Russell.
Present.
Member Ward.
Present.
Member Wright.
Present.
Mayor Sierra.
Present.
6 present.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 5, consideration of minutes from the previous session. Any changes to the minutes from the regular council meeting from May 19th? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the May 19th meeting?
Motion to approve.
Thank you very much, Member Wright. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Neunenkamp.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Present.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Present. Or aye, sorry.
Because I'm throwing
Aye.
off tonight. Okay, 6 ayes.
Move, yeah, there we go. We'll get there. We'll get there. Yeah. Let's go back to agenda item 4 now. Moving on to agenda item 6, this is recognitions. This is the Citizen Planning School graduates. So City Council would like to recognize all the students that attended the spring session of the Citizen Planning School. The Citizen Planning School is an interactive program sponsored by the Community Development Department. It provides our residents and business owners with a background in the fundamentals of city planning. Students engage in discussions, gain insight into the planning process, and learn from Community Development Department staff. Classes include the development process, a development tour of Englewood, current planning projects, an interactive city building project, and a board and commission member panel discussion. Many graduates go on to other citizen academies or apply for appointment to various different boards or commissions. We appreciate your dedication to the city and congratulations on completing the session, everyone. We are going to be calling each of the names. I'll go down and hand you a certificate, and we'll also take a picture after each certificate is given, and then we'll take a group picture at the end with all the city council. So Stephanie, I'll pass it over to you.
All right. Sonia Strom. Susanna Simmons. Thomas Crux. Or Cruck. Rita Pavlich. Shelley Lachey. Pat Harper. Rebecca Kramer. All right, Nancy Paglione. Nick Palmer. Matthew Mitchell. Michelle Raymond. Lynn Howley. Mary Crook. John Lane. All right, Kayleen McCrum. Lynette Moore. Barb Chumley. Betsy Wallace. And Bruce Raymond. Thank you. Addison Welsh. Addison Welsh.
All right, everyone, we're moving on to recognition of the Stormwater Coordination Team. So the City of Englewood would like to recognize the formation of a RAIN Coordination Team, a multi-department effort designed to proactively address potential storm impacts and safeguard the community. This team is comprised of highly committed staff from Public Works, Parks, Code Enforcement, and Utilities. Before any forecasted rain event expecting more than a quarter-inch of rain, these staff develop and implement a coordinated plan of action. Team members prepare by conducting inspections of stormwater grates and infrastructures to ensure all systems are clear of debris. Special attention is given to known hotspots around the city, including road, alleys, parks, and other public areas. These areas are checked, cleaned, and swept as needed before each expected storm. During rain events, staff monitor these critical locations to catch any issues early. At the same time, Utilities monitors the forecast and works with local water users to adjust flows in the city ditch. This helps make the most of its capacity and reduce the risk of flooding. So I want to thank each of you for the work that you do to prepare and keep this community safe during storm events. As the city clerk calls your name, please come to the front. We'll take a picture as well, and then we'll take a picture with all of council as well. So Stephanie, I'll pass it over to you before, or afterwards, I'll say a few words as well about this project.
Okay, Tyler Gelles. Sebastian Donner. Will Lucero. Harold Herrera. Phil Neal. Tyler Colte. Felipe Hernandez. All right, Jimmy D. Piazza. Jerry Weir. Josh Peterson. Tori Garrett, Adrian Torres, Tim Holt, Kyle Prado, Luis Esparza, Dave Lewis, AJ Futro, Carolyn Fasaruk, Sean Kimberling, Eric Klinger, and Chris Edelstein.
No, so thank you very much to this crew that we just presented awards to. What I wanted to point out, obviously, we've made a lot of investments in terms of our stormwater infrastructure. But in the meantime, while that's being built out, like this project is super important. We hear from a lot of constituents about just concerns that they have in specific areas of the city that were impacted back in 2019 and obviously get impacted with any rain event. So for the team to be proactive in looking at areas that have been a problem in the past, it means a lot to me. It gives me peace of mind. It gives our neighbors peace of mind in the areas that are affected. So just thank you very much for everything that you've done over the last few years and for putting together this program. So thank you very much, everyone. All right, everyone, I think we are now moving on to recognition of public comment. Everyone, so this is the time that we get to listen to the public on any items that they would like to bring up. We have allotted 90 minutes for this session. We'll be limiting each speaker to about 3 minutes each. Each speaker was to sign up in the back of the room. There was a sign-up sheet. And so basically we just ask you to state your address or your cross streets if you're an Englewood resident, or if you're not an Englewood resident, just to let us know which city that you reside in. I won't be listening out won't be saying out loud the actual address, but I'll just state whether or not you're a Englewood resident, what district you live in, and if you live outside the city, I'll just mention that city as well. For anyone that is speaking online, please contact the city clerk's office prior to Wednesday, or 5 p.m. on Wednesday prior to the city council regular meeting. And if you do want to use any AV materials, please submit those to the city clerk by 5 p.m. the Thursday previous to this meeting. So with that, everyone, I will call out the names. And I'll first read off the people that have not been here over the last 90 days. So up first is going to be Benjamin Ben David. He's online. Is Benjamin not available? We'll come back.
I don't see him online.
You don't see
right
Benjamin?
now.
Okay. We'll try back at the end. Up next is Susanna Simmons, and I believe you are a District 4 resident. Susanna here. Good evening, Susanna. If when you are ready, you may begin. Actually, if you wouldn't mind pressing the button to make it green, there should be a star. There you are.
Right. Well, hello. Thank you for letting me comment tonight. I am a resident of 12 years and I plan on being a lifer, so I'm here. This is my place. I'm here to talk about Western Sky and the South Broadway micro community and supporting local businesses. I have 3 suggestions that are part of or categories identified in the South Broadway redevelopment project. First one, signature events. Second one, safety. Third one, economic development. So for signature events, I can see a lot of pop-up parks. That green patch north of Western Sky is priceless. I've heard that there could be food trucks kind of lined in that parking lot as well. I would go out to that. And I have an idea of maybe the BERT could make a little loop and do a pub crawl, maybe once a quarter, just to connect the 2 different, well, there's the main downtown and then there's my cool downtown. And then next up would be safety. It would be really nice to have a crosswalk between Englewood Tavern and Western Sky, basically, as people are drinking and probably not making the best decisions. And then the third one, economic development. I would love to be able to walk or bike to restaurants and more retail opportunities along Broadway. It seems like we are a motorcyclist destination. I see a lot of cruising happening on Broadway. I think if we could lean into that, maybe celebrate that a little bit more, that could be an opportunity. So I'd like to continue to harness the innovation and entrepreneurship on the South Broadway Strip. I hope you'll consider my 3 suggestions. Such strategic initiatives can make South Broadway a destination for residents and can be an asset for the city of Englewood and the larger area. Thank you.
Susanna, thank you very much for your time tonight. Any questions from council? Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Susanna. The question I had was, I was typing in your second idea and I missed the third. Could you repeat it, please?
Economic development.
Yes.
We have a lot of motorcyclists cruising on Broadway, and there could be a way to maximize on that.
So like an event?
Yeah, probably
motorcycle-specific
another
or something,
pop-up
another event?
signature
Okay.
event.
Got it. Thank you.
Any further questions? All right, seeing none. Susanna, thank you very much for your time tonight. Up next is Judith Marenthal, online speaker. Do we have Judith online?
I'm here.
Good evening, Judith. You are a District 3 resident?
Yes,
All right, perfect. Judith, when you are ready, you may begin.
thank you. I am opposed to bringing signature events from downtown Englewood to South Broadway. The adjacent areas are composed of primarily quiet residential neighborhoods. These are areas where people can enjoy time with family and friends in their homes. The addition of public events will result in an increase of crowds, noise, and reduced parking. I am not opposed to what will always be needed upgrades, but ask that you are focused not only on future, but also the present quality of life. Values and perspectives of what is aesthetically pleasing and fun are subjective. The creation of multiple committees to promote buy-in and activities requires time and resources that could be used towards other priorities and projects. Contrary to what I have heard in past meetings, we are still very much alive. Please allow for deferring lifestyles.
Anything else, Judith?
That's it. Thank you.
Judith, thank you very much for your time tonight. Any questions? Go ahead, Member Ray.
Thank you. I would like you to elaborate on what you meant by "we are still alive." I don't understand what you meant by that.
I've been listening to some of the past meetings and I keep hearing that there's something wrong with this neighborhood. We need improvements and we need to thrive. I keep hearing that buzzword. And again, that is subjective. I think people are thriving here now. So that was what I meant by that statement.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Judith is saying no further questions. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Up next is Colleen Vercandy. Colleen, I believe you're a District 3 resident. When you're ready, you may begin.
Yes, sir. Good evening. My name is Colleen. Some of you may know me because I work for the city of Englewood. Some may know me because of my volunteer work at Sherilyn Elementary School. And some of you may find me at Western Sky. What you may not know about me is that I've lived in Englewood South Broadway Heights neighborhood since 2004. I've raised my children here where they attended Englewood Public Schools from pre-K to high school. That said, I've seen a lot of changes occur in the 20 years since we moved to Englewood. In 2011, we voted to improve the district's high school and middle school campuses. Then again in 2016, we voted to approve the mill levy to replace our elementary and preschools. South Broadway remained unchanged. I've also seen changes in our historic downtown area where it is now economically vibrant, connected, and safe, where businesses thrive and are promoted by city websites, social media pages, and events, which attract visitors and patrons to eat, shop, and enjoy the refreshed art and murals, where they are safer due to pedestrian safety improvements, where the residents' quality of life have improved because of job growth and increased income opportunities. South Broadway remained unchanged. Now the city plans to redevelop the city center to add a new city hall, residential units, retail and office spaces, a hotel, and public gathering spaces, which will attract new residents, create jobs, and enhance our overall quality of life, all while South Broadway remained unchanged. Some call it depressing, decaying, and an eyesore. The infrastructure is old and dilapidated. Traffic is a concern due to people speeding and driving recklessly through the area. Pedestrians basically risk their lives to cross the street. Most people use it as a thoroughfare to travel through to Denver and don't see the vibrant businesses that exist in the area, which makes it difficult for businesses to survive. I have witnessed many businesses turn over in the same locations time and time again. South Broadway needs a major transformation, and I support the South Broadway Revitalization Project. All we are asking is for the same opportunities as the other neighborhoods. We want to bring vibrancy into our neighborhood. The City of Englewood's mission is dedicated to enhancing the quality of life for those we serve by providing superior services to maintain a vibrant and inclusive community, invest in our future through fiscally responsible decisions, and to preserve our unique identity while welcoming new growth. Please help the residents of South Broadway Heights and other neighborhoods feel included. Show us that we belong and make us proud to say that we live in Englewood.
Colleen, thank you very much for your time tonight. Member Russell does have a question.
Thank you. I just have a question. One thing you said is the infrastructure is old and dilapidated. Can you give me examples of what you're talking about?
Well, a lot of the businesses down on South Broadway have not been fixed up at all. Like across the streets, there's empty businesses. Seems like the residents just come in or the businesses come in and they're there for a year and then they leave. But we've seen problems with like plumbing in certain parts of the businesses in that area, and it just needs to be fixed.
Okay. I thank you for answering that question. Sometimes people look at infrastructure as things you cannot see.
Yeah.
Also.
There are things that need to be fixed that you cannot see as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Seeing no further questions, Colleen, thank you very much for your time tonight. Up next is Whitney Bradford, a Denver resident. Good evening, Whitney.
Hello.
When you are ready, you may begin.
Thank you. My name is Whitney Bradford. Along with my partner Harrison, I own Western Sky Bar and Tap Room at 4361 South Broadway. We opened in 2021, and since then have hosted countless community events, including Beers and Ballots, which some of you attended in 2023. We've supported local nonprofits, hosted local choirs and theater companies, as well as local and touring musicians and comedians. We've started a book club and even held 2 weddings. Our calendar of events regularly draws attendees from Denver, Littleton, Lakewood, and as far away as Superior and Longmont. Perhaps most importantly, we've built relationships with an incredible community of regulars, most of whom live in the neighborhoods around Western Sky. Our successes are the result of grit, honest hard work, and a love for what we do. Owning Western Sky has certainly been the most stressful, challenging, all-consuming endeavor, while also being my greatest joy. I have received overwhelming love and care from the individuals I have the pleasure of seeing every day, and I believe that the community we've built is something special. However, in the time we've been in Englewood, growing our business has felt impossible no matter how hard we work.
Sure, there are a lot of factors working against businesses like ours, but one of our biggest challenges is our location, where the city's neglect is apparent not only to us as business owners, but to residents. Just last week, a first-time customer said, "This is a great spot in a bad location." Every year, we've participated in the Englewood Block Party, which I would like to note is not on a block. People tell us they never go to that side of town when learning our cross streets. I've watched people peer in our window to make sure we're open because businesses come and go so fast around here. These are people who live in Englewood, who see the same empty storefronts I do when driving by, and are not confident businesses will last. It's demoralizing. Additionally, traffic speeds by with no measures to slow people down, which makes venturing to our location from the surrounding neighborhoods arduous and even dangerous. The city's plan to revitalize South Broadway between Jefferson and Bellevue brings me hope that our bad location will start to see new life in the form of a supportive business community, greenery, and pedestrian-friendly infrastructure. As a business owner in this area, I wholeheartedly support these efforts. Our lease ends in October 2026. I want it to make sense for us to stay, but right now it doesn't. The amount of work it takes to keep our lights on is not physically, mentally, or financially sustainable. I am asking you to make it easier for businesses like mine to not only survive, but to thrive, and to care as much about this part of your city as I do, and support these efforts as well. Thank you.
Whitney, I thank you for coming tonight. Any questions for Whitney? Whitney, thank you very much for coming tonight. Up next is Matt Meyer, I believe a District 3 resident. Good evening, Matt. When you are ready, you may begin.
Good evening. My name is Matt Meyer. I'm a teacher and I live in the Duncan Park neighborhood with my wife and daughter. I'm here to ask the City Council support city staff as they continue to investigate ways to invest in South Broadway. I love Englewood because it provides a small town, livable experience within the larger metro area. In our neighborhood, we can walk to the park, school, and grocery store. With summer starting, I'm particularly excited to get back to riding our bikes around town. However, we have found that from Duncan Park, it is easier to access businesses in downtown Englewood than to visit the businesses on the west side of Broadway. This is because we can ride north on residential streets and easily cross under 285. Once downtown, it's easy to park our bikes and walk among the shops and restaurants. I hope that the South Broadway revitalization plan can bring more of this experience closer to our home in the southern part of the city. I make an effort to shop and eat on South Broadway, but it is rarely a family outing because of the limitations of the physical space. In particular, crossing Broadway with a kid is stressful. It is hard to ride a bike or lock one up along the narrow Asian sidewalks. I like shopping at Sprouts and Ace, but honestly, it is sometimes easier to visit another location on my drive home from work. Improving accessibility of South Broadway would also help us access businesses and amenities on the west side of town, such as the rec center and movement where my daughter loves to climb. I also hope that adding public art and a signature event would help us celebrate the existing businesses there. My family discovered many of our current Englewood favorites at the block party. Perhaps this effort would also attract new businesses to some of the lots that are currently vacant. I know that some have expressed concern with the pace of change in Englewood. I certainly understand that as a community, we need to be intentional about our future. That said, I live 4 blocks from South Broadway and I'm excited by the scope of what has been proposed in the planning process. I worry that if we as a community do not define the positive change that we want, then unplanned change will happen to us. I hope that you all support city staff in their efforts to set a vision for revitalization in South Broadway. Thank you.
Matt, thank you very much for your time tonight. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Matt. Up next is Lynn Peterson, a District 4 resident. Good evening, Lynn. When you are ready, you may begin.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here tonight. I'm here in support of the South Broadway Revitalization Project. In October of 2020, I had the great privilege of purchasing my home in Jackson Heights around Cherokee and Princeton. What a joy it has been to build roots in Englewood. Of course, with COVID in October of 2020, I still wasn't sure if I could approach a neighbor, even if I wore a mask, to introduce myself. Since then, thankfully, I've been able to connect with a few folks on my block. As a newer resident, though, I'm still always looking for more connection opportunities in Englewood. Today, I'm a proud graduate of Elevate Englewood, an Englewood board member, a part of Vibrant Englewood, and deeply excited to engage in multiple South Broadway revitalization committees. Still, I wonder if my neighborhood is an inclusive one. I'm still looking for more signs. As a queer woman, I'm always looking for businesses and environments to frequent outside of my home that put energy into creating spaces that are intentionally inclusive and safe. revitalizing this Broadway corridor through dynamic neighborhood branding, wayfinding, public art, safer streets, and pedestrian accessibility, just to name a few strategies, will lend directly to an increase in diverse businesses and community spaces. These third spaces will serve as a welcoming place for all different types of people. This will foster social connection, civic engagement, and of course, boost the local economy. Thanks.
Lynn, thank you very much for your time tonight. Any questions? Lynn, thank you very much for coming tonight. Up next is Christine Brinker, a District 1 resident. Good evening, Christine. When you are ready, you may begin.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm here to add to the chorus of voices that is here in support of the South Broadway Revitalization Project and mention a couple things that I think are especially exciting and notable about it. First, it will be great to grow the community of small and diverse businesses that support each other and that can build off of each other. When we come down to South Broadway, we're usually going to just a single business or another single business, and there's not enough cohesiveness there to keep residents like me to linger around and to walk around the neighborhood and support the other businesses there. Second, and somewhat relatedly, it would be great to transform the corridor from one that people just speed through as fast as they can to get somewhere else to one that people specifically want to go to and want to support. And to me, a key aspect of that is the complete streets part of the project, which makes minor modifications to the street design and the aesthetics to make it comfortable and safe and inviting for people that want to walk around there, or families that wanted to go with their kids biking there, or residents nearby, as was pointed out, who are still alive, who might want to go pick up something from the hardware store or stay out to dinner there. And we need to make it safe enough as far as street infrastructure, not just as far as crime, but also as far as street infrastructure, and inviting enough to want to do so. I think it's really commendable that the City Council and the staff are looking at all the different and various aspects and needs and areas of Englewood, and looking at how we can support all of those different aspects and needs and communities, which in some cases, those needs are different now in 2025 than they might have been in 1985. So I'm excited to see this planning effort, and I'm really proud of the large community engagement effort that's part of it. Thanks.
Christine, thank you very much for coming tonight. Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Christine. Up next is Elizabeth Kopp, District 2 resident, I believe. Good evening, Elizabeth. When you are ready, you may begin.
Hi, thank you. I am also here to speak in strong support of the South Broadway Revitalization Project. When my husband and I first moved to our neighborhood, we could see the potential, but frankly, many things were in flux, and our walk score was mediocre at best. What we've witnessed over the past few years has been transformative. The choice of restaurants, coffee shops, bars, and retail that are now just a 5 to 10 minute walk from our front door has exponentially improved our quality of life. I wake up each morning knowing I can grab coffee at a local cafe, meet friends for dinner without driving across town, and contribute to businesses owned by my neighbors. This isn't just convenience, it's community building in action. These walkable amenities have created natural gathering spaces where relationships form and our neighborhood identity strengthens. As I think about aging in place over the next few decades, I want to live in a neighborhood that continues to prioritize opportunities for residents to socialize, stay active, and contribute to our local economy in safe and accessible ways. The 9 strategies outlined in this revitalization project, from enhancing safety and walkability to supporting local economic development and creating new community amenities, directly address these goals. I know the word development can trigger concerns, but what I've experienced firsthand is that when development is done responsibly with genuine community input like this project emphasizes, it adds immense value and joy to a community where everyone feels included and engaged. The Broadway corridor is already home to established local businesses and a budding arts district, but we're leaving out an entire piece of the city due south. This revitalization project will build on these existing strengths while addressing the opportunities we've all identified for improvement. That's smart, community-driven planning. I urge you to fully support this project. Our neighborhood has already shown what's possible when we invest in walkable, connected communities, and we can continue building on that foundation. Thank you.
Elizabeth, thank you very much for your time tonight. Any questions for Elizabeth? Seeing none, Elizabeth, thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Up next is Emma Shoup, District 3 resident. Good evening, Emma. When you are ready, you may begin.
Hello, and thank you for your time. I'm speaking today in support of the efforts to revitalize South Broadway. I was raised here in Englewood, right near South Broadway. I currently live next to South Broadway with my family of 4. I think I've been here like a cumulative of like 30-ish years if you take out the time I went off to college. This part of Englewood is very near and dear to my heart. I'm very excited to see the city engaging in this project. I envision South Broadway as like the neighborhood's main street, and I want to see it thrive with a successful and diverse community of small businesses. I want a street where I can walk into shops, bump into neighbors, sit down with an acquaintance and have a cup of coffee. I want a street that is safe for my children to cross to visit friends, and go walk into a convenience store and purchase unhealthy snacks, right? Let's see, South Broadway already has a lot of good things going for it. I love that I can walk over to Western Sky on Friday nights and participate in embarrassing karaoke if I want to with my community. I love that I can walk into A&A Trading Post with my kids and purchase a wind chime for their mom as a Mother's Day gift. You know, I love that the neighbor kids do grab our kids and they do walk to the gas station to buy cheap donuts and too much soda that is more than necessary for a 12-year-old. But because South Broadway has such a strong foundation, I foresee the city's role here to enhance what is already there. I encourage the city to pursue policies that reduce the corridor's dependence on cars. The city could do this by enhancing public transit access, widening sidewalks to make it more comfortable to walk, narrowing lanes to encourage traffic to slow down. I would love to see more crosswalks. Walking 3 blocks to cross the street safely is not a fun thing when cars are zooming by at 40+ miles an hour. I encourage the city to pursue policies that incrementally change the corridor. I'd love to see elimination of like parking minimums for businesses and new developments. I love the idea of more city amenities, green space, using the green space next to Western Sky for community events would be amazing. Pop-up city library, all of these amenities sound very awesome. I am very excited for these efforts and thankful that the city is engaging with the community. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Emma, thank you very much for your time tonight. Any questions for Emma? Emma, thank you very much for coming tonight. Up next is Sam Koenig, a District 2 resident. Good evening, Sam. When you are ready, you may begin.
Good evening, Council. My name is Sam. I'm here to discuss adding housing and redevelopment back into the South Broadway revitalization project, simply because house prices in the metro area in Englewood are simply too high. Change is really hard. Many of you on council, many of the people listening to me right now have lived in Englewood for a very long time. It's natural to feel protective of the streets and homes that hold your memories. I understand the impulse. Change is really hard. But I want to be clear that the impulse against change in our neighborhoods is not consequence-free. There are real trade-offs that impact real people. Saying no prices out families with children who would be filling our schools. When we say no to our business community, which would love more patrons to live close by. We say no to new property and sales tax revenue that could support public safety or go towards expanding our sidewalks, or whatever else council wants to fund. I speak as one of those families. My wife's a nurse at Swedish. We have an 8-week-old child. I love the city. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here on a Monday night. But modest 1960s homes in this town, around $600,000. With a 20% down payment, we're talking $120,000 and a monthly payment of $3,500 per month. Am I going to be priced out? Could you afford to rebuy your own home if you had to? Englewood did not cause this crisis on our own. We can't fix it alone. But every yes or no here matters. I'm asking Englewood to do its part. Some buyers can afford very expensive housing. I can't afford the new builds, but clearly some people can. Even when we do not allow some of this expensive housing, those buyers just don't disappear. They start competing for the existing housing stock in our neighborhoods. More people chasing limited supply. Prices keep climbing. So next time there's opportunities to consider more housing, picture the family who could live there, the children who might go to the schools, the nurses who take care of you at Swedish, the revenue that could pay for the services you care about. Before you say no, think about families like mine. Think about the future families of Englewood. It's really easy to say no to change. I'm asking you to say yes just a little more often. Thank you.
Sam, thank you very much for coming tonight. Any questions? Sam, thank you very much for coming. Up next is Andrew Forlines, District 4 resident. Good evening, Andrew.
Hello.
When you are ready, you may begin.
All right. I'm not going to be as put together as everyone else. I'll just put that out of the way right now. I'm for redevelopment, revitalization. I'm for less car infrastructure. We need to humanize the streets again. Bike lanes, more tree canopy, more walkability. Great stuff. I am passionate about the neighborhood organizing that's happening. I know the city put in place the neighborhood resource program several years ago. I've been the leader of Bellevue Park neighbors for several years since I moved in. Formerly, when I lived in Denver, I was part of the Overland Park Neighborhood Association. I think there's been a lot of success in the resource program. I think there's been a lot of great things happen. The grants have been fantastic to bring people together. But I want it to be more and to grow. And I look to what I'm familiar with is the Denver's registered neighborhood organization system, where the city officially recognizes organizations of community members, of residents who are actively engaged in their homes, in their residents' neighborhoods. So I would really like for us to start thinking about how we can take the next step of just not just resourcing neighborhoods and thinking about it as we're listening to everyone talk here, connecting with those neighborhood organizations in a more meaningful way so that we can get input from them instead of people having to come out on a Monday night, which is great. It's good to be here, but there are constraints. I organize with the kids. My kids are in school here, so the families come over, and there's a lot of people that I talk to that are residents that don't have time to get involved, but they can get involved with the block parties we have and the organizing we do. So just want to put that on the radar. A couple of other notes. Sustainability plan. I know the Sustainability Commission, someone mentioned, had not been talked to about this revitalization plan. So trying to figure out when that happens so that we can revitalize in a smart, energy efficient, sustainable way so we have a better impact there. Something that came up is that people can't run for office in Englewood if they work for another municipality. I'm not sure if this is something we want to do to preclude people from running, when I think an affidavit could suffice in getting rid of any conflict of interest. You know, if a felon can be the president, I think a municipal worker could be a city council member in another district. Bellevue Park, I really love the train and the farm. I want that more accessible. I want us being conscious of accessibility, giving more free tickets and tokens away, maybe some free days. I think the library should give out tokens, part of their reading program. I think the tokens should include the Pirates Cove, so kids can earn ways to get in, so that everyone's getting in. Because we don't need commerce in more places in the community. Thank you.
Andrew, that was put together, so. Any questions for Andrew? Seeing none, Andrew, thank you very much for coming tonight. Up next is Lisa Lovelace, District 4 resident. Good evening, Lisa.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for the time tonight.
Of course.
So I am also here echoing all of the voices in support of the South Broadway Revitalization Program, especially the one regarding affordability of housing. I have lived in Englewood for almost 6 years. I've rented for almost 6 years. I also work part-time at Western Sky Bar and Tap, which has been for 1.5 years. So I've seen a lot of different perspectives and voices of the neighborhood and the community. It's easy to say I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for Whitney and Western Sky and the community that I have built there. However, in that 5 years, I've also seen the affordability of housing. So the prospect of me staying without some sort of revitalization is limited. It wasn't piquing my interest until I heard about this plan and this project to even consider being a permanent tenant of the city of Englewood. And I love it here because it does give a small town feel in a very big city, which I grew up in rural Kansas, so I appreciate that small town feel, which also lends to my appreciation of the community that has been built in this area. I've also heard mention of the yard space between Western Sky and the BMO Bank and how that would be wonderfully used. I agree. Most of the visibility that I get when I leave for work in the morning is unhoused persons that are camping out in that space. And it would be really nice to see a more positive something happening there. Pop-ups, community events, anything of that nature. Yeah, I'm also not put together this evening with this statement. However, I also echo the walkability prospects. You cannot cross Broadway. We call it playing Frogger, crossing Broadway in that section of Englewood. There's a very definitive segregation between downtown Englewood and South Broadway of Englewood, and the inclusivity is just not there. And I would just love to see more involvement and the revitalization to go through. Thank you.
Lisa, thank you very much for your time tonight. Any questions? Actually, Lisa, I'll ask you just because it's come up a couple of times, but what's the speed limit on that side of Broadway?
I want to say it's like 35.
So it is 35, so it's not 25 like it is in downtown.
No, and even though the speed limit is 35, the general consensus is that it's about 40 to 55.
I was going to say probably even faster than that.
It was even brought to my attention recently that I hadn't noticed until recently as well. Like the median, people just U-turn right over it because they don't even see it.
Okay.
The yard space in between the bank and the bar was, people were pulling into it thinking it was a parking lot when it was snowing because they didn't see the curb. They didn't see that there was a delineation that is not actually a parking lot.
Well, that's good to know, Lisa. Thank you very much for providing
Thank
that
you.
feedback as well. No further questions. Thank you for coming tonight, Lisa. Let me see here. We are on to James Sundag. That last name? District 3 residents. Good evening, James.
Thanks, everybody. Good evening, Mayor, council members, city staff. My name is James, and this is the first time I've addressed this chamber since I bought a house and moved to Englewood's District 3 about 2 years ago. I work, live, and raise my family here in Englewood, and I'm here tonight to voice my strong support for the revitalization of the South Broadway corridor. This stretch of Broadway is more than just a road, it's the spine of our community. It reflects us. But right now, it's falling way short of its potential. Medians are derelict and ugly, the pedestrian experience is unsafe, storefronts sit empty, and businesses fail frequently. And while there are a few bright spots, the corridor as a whole isn't reflecting the vibrant, welcoming, and forward-looking community that Englewood is. But revitalizing South Broadway isn't just about aesthetics. It's about creating a place where our local businesses can thrive, where our families can feel safe walking and hanging out, and where we can attract more of the kind of growth that reflects the community we are and deserve to be. Just look at Western Sky, one of my favorite places in Englewood. It's a warm, welcoming small business that represents exactly the kind of energy we need more of. Every time I stop in, I see neighbors connecting, artists sharing their work, and a realized vision of a vibrant, walkable, community-first Englewood that's really taking shape right now. But one or two bright spots aren't enough, and more businesses like Western Sky won't establish themselves and won't stay around if we don't give this corridor the attention that it deserves. This investment will bring long-term returns by increasing property values, growing our tax base, and making this part of our city a destination and not just a pass-through. A vibrant South Broadway corridor means a more connected, more prosperous, and more livable Englewood. So I urge you to keep this project moving forward and to be bold in your vision. Thank you for your time and for your commitment to the city.
James, thank you very much for speaking tonight. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you so much, James. Up next is Andy Stanley, a Denver resident. Good evening, Andy.
Good evening. Thank you so much for your time. So while I am a Denver resident, I actually, when I moved out to Colorado 2.5 years ago, lived in Englewood for a year in District 4. Absolutely wonderful place, and I'm actively trying to figure out how to get back here. That said, it is fascinating to me that whenever I lived here, and even now coming back to visit friends, as I am also a part-time bartender at Western Sky, it's amazing to me that there hasn't been any change. I have seen shops that I joke now, it's a front. It's got to be a front, right? There's people going in there, but there's not actually activity. There's got to be something. And so as soon as I heard about the revitalization project, I immediately jumped on board. I was like, yes, this is exactly what we need. This is how we can extend the Broadway corridor along with Hampton is the perfect segue for a small town such as this. You have your neighborhoods across and on the outskirts, but then you have that thoroughfare that you support and promote and bring in that revitalization. So I would love to see that here in Englewood. I would love to be able to tell friends that they should come and see me when I'm on shift and then not reply back, you mean in Englewood? And so any support that can be provided to this area would be greatly appreciated. And again, affordability for housing, I would love to also throw in a hat because, again, I would love to come back here. So with that, thank you.
Andy, thank you very much for your time. Member Wright has a question.
Thank you. Thank you, Andy. Could you elaborate a front? So are you seeing empty businesses where people are going in and...
It seems so, yes. And so I did notice in the revitalization project, there is a catalog of perhaps vacant properties. Excellent way to start as far as figuring out what's going on there and seeing if there's some kind of incentivization that can be given to these businesses that might just be sitting on it and waiting. So yes.
Okay, thank you.
Andy, I see no further questions. Thank you very much for coming tonight. Up next is Ryan Kelly, District 3 resident. Good evening, Ryan.
Thanks. I'm also here to support the South Broadway thing. I wanted to start by saying thank you to all of you that are considering it and to the city staff that I know are working hard on it. I appreciate it. I live between downtown Englewood and South Broadway, and I'm super excited about all the stuff that's going downtown. And I'd love to be able to walk the other direction and be excited about that too. Let's see. So I'm going to serve on a couple of the committees, specifically the signature event one and the new city amenities one. On the signature event thing, Steve, I heard you a couple weeks ago talk about concerns about how the Englewood Block Party is like an issue with like CDOT and just blocking off the street. I just wanted to point out that I think we can have a signature event that doesn't cause that kind of disruption, for sure. I lived in North Park neighborhood of San Diego for most of my 20s, and they had a lot of events that didn't block off the street, and they didn't disrupt me, and I lived there. So I know it's possible. Let's see. On the new city amenities thing, something I'm going to work on that too, so I'll have more and more ideas. But I'm excited just generally about the idea that, I don't know, this might seem to you as council members as like a cost line item, which I'm sure it is, but I don't know that it really has to be. And I think cooperation between the local businesses and the community, both financially and also making decisions about what goes into the community, can make things a little bit lighter. It doesn't have to be just the city putting money into it. So lastly, to the other residents of Englewood, so my neighbors, I wanted to say thank you to Emma for the comments about all the things that are awesome about South Broadway, because I think that it's kind of been a lot of like, you know, it needs to change, which for sure it can get better, but like, yeah, it's awesome. And I love living here, so I'm happy with it, but it can get better. And I also wanted to point out that I don't think talking about revitalizing that area is not a disrespect to the current residents or the neighborhood or the culture. Like, we're broadly saying we want to make it better, and it can get better like in all sorts of different ways, which could be like even more of the same stuff that's going on. So to my other neighbors that are kind of concerned about it and want to push back against this project, I would say, like, just join one of these committees because you can be on it, and let's figure out how to make it, you know, better together. I feel like just generally what we do as far as like improvement or don't improve, et cetera, is a lot less important than how we do it. And like the most important thing is that we just kind of do it all together and it'll be fine. That's it. Thank you.
Ryan, thank you very much for your time tonight. Any questions? Don't see any. Ryan, thank you very much for speaking. All right, everyone, I think we're now going back to the names that have spoken over the last 90 days. Up first is Kathleen Bailey, a District 4 resident.
Beautiful. I have 4 questions tonight. One, like I said last study session, the revitalization, making Broadway itself better and prettier and cleaner and more accessible and more walkable on Broadway itself without disrupting existing neighborhoods is fabulous. The question I didn't get answered last time is, did staff drop this 2017 plan that's up on the screen that's entirely high-density transit-oriented development going way into existing neighborhoods? 2, a study session that was already on this month's agenda, when you had your revitalization study session, and I expected to watch it tonight, was simply removed from tonight's agenda without any discussion as of the 5/28 mayor-manager meeting. In that study session, staff were going to present council with, quote, a high-level overview of the development of a redevelopment strategy of the South Broadway corridor from Jefferson to the intersection of Bellevue, a strategy for the implementation of the only existing redevelopment plan for the South Broadway corridor, the plan currently on the big screen. Is this just delayed or has staff dropped this 2017 plan? 3, I also want to know why Mayor Sierra falsely told residents in his council response to me last meeting that the plan currently up on the big screen is, quote, the state plan. Although transit-oriented development was encouraged across the nation in 2017, Governor Polis wasn't governor, and House Bill 2413 wasn't adopted until 2024. Community Development, P&Z, and Mayor Olson worked together to develop this plan, along with their on-the-quiet Title 16 amendments that were made to allow staff to achieve this high-density, transit-oriented city goal. I am familiar with all of this because in 2016 and 17, I fought against the adoption of this plan due to its planned destruction of so many of our existing communities and the planned elimination of hundreds of existing modest affordable homes targeted for redevelopment. And when residents began arriving in tears at meetings describing devastating impacts, I found the laws changed that allow that to occur. House Bill 2413 offers community development significant grant money to maximize maximum TOC development like staff has on the plan. However, collecting maximum money at the cost of destroying our city is not acceptable. But House Bill 2413 also offers a far less severe option, and further funding is available, and that option is transit centers. This option may also require only 15 units per total acreage of eligible parcels in the transit area, and all the redevelopments done since.
Kathleen, sorry about that. Your 3 minutes are up. Thank you for speaking tonight. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for coming tonight. Up next is David Wang, District 1 resident. Go ahead, David.
Hi, thank you guys so much. I'm grateful for the clean water. Do you guys have a packet of this? I'm actually a District 2 resident in the Wellness District. I'm here to talk about a health issue that will affect every single Englewood resident, and it will be the greatest health issue for the entire globe for the next 30 years. some background, I was like the valedictorian at the top ranked school in Colorado with the largest number of subjects studied. And I have friends that have PhDs from Harvard in neuroscience, MIT, Stanford in biophysics. So I have people to act as sounding boards. And I also have experience in the 2008 Democratic National Convention performing on stage at a fundraiser, and in 2016 as a state level delegate for Trump. And so I can safely say this is not a partisan issue. This will affect the health of many residents. This will affect the bottom line of the budget. This will affect the local economy. So the main problem is the radio frequency radiation levels Englewood residents face are 68,000% higher than other residents in other cities like Aurora, Colorado. Because of the fact that I brought up, part of the reason is because the macro cells are based in Englewood. And when I moved to Englewood 2 years ago, I set up my business on Broadway along with some other lawyers and consultants, IT professionals similar to me. No energy, could not think, physically, mentally dead. And I spent around 12 months in the past 2 years, just idle, laying in bed, not being able to, not knowing what was going on. And just finally being able to piece the pieces together, realize, oh, what's the root cause, purchase the right protective equipment. Other members in the community, doctors at the hospital, members, they went through the exact same problems with heart problems, with memory problems. Community leader, Christian pastor was talking about his wife with dementia. So my goal with this is to be able to present factual information about a problem to bring some insight what's going on in Englewood, especially with District 1, where I tried to get work done and tried to set up shop. I, along with some other independent contractors, moved to Littleton to work. That was much better. And so this document, please take it home and just browse if you want. It contains answers on what's the problem, what's the root cause, what's going on with the biology.
David, your 3 minutes are up. David, thank you very much for coming tonight. Member Russell has a question for you.
I do. I do have a question. Is the solution to this problem in your information?
Yes, I laid out different practical and pragmatic solutions for this because I'm taking an initiative to work with federal, state, and local level governments on this issue because Englewood is one of the few dozen cities around the world who are facing this new emerging problem. One of the most practical solutions in the very back is right now, someone who has an apartment in the urban city in District 2, we have 4 different cellular companies trying to have faster and faster internet speeds. And so they're all competing and they're all placing a bunch of micro cell towers in that area. So my apartment within 250 feet has almost 2,000 of those cellular towers. That's
Okay.
causing the radiation levels.
Is your contact information on here also?
Oh, I should probably.
Actually, if you would give your contact information to the city clerk. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate that.
I have a question.
Member Wright, go ahead.
Thank you. So you're talking about cell towers. Okay,
It's not just cell towers.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's my question. So if there's a radio antenna is the best way I could say it, that only receives data, it's not transmitting, is that harmful?
The problem with cell towers is they're constantly
It's not a cell tower, it's called a gateway. It's like a fixed network data collector.
Which one are you?
It's not in there, it's something else that I'm asking about.
I'm not an electrical engineer.
Okay,
I'm
that's
just
what I need.
synthesizing.
Okay. All right, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
I'm going out of I have a business and technology background.
Okay.
Okay,
It's
all right,
been answered,
okay,
David.
thank you.
David, I see no further questions. Thank you for your time tonight.
All right, thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you. Gary Kozak, District 3 resident.
Gary Kozak, District 4. Thank you all for you coming out. I've been here 74 years. My grandparents homesteaded in 1859. The old horse cart, Cherry Lynn horse cart. I've been around all of that. I'm on one of the committees that's going to help you. And I'm really glad that I was here to hear what you had to say. And I will help you because you notice none of them said apartment houses. Business, 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 and houses. Get off this bit of apartment houses. Now, one other thing to you folks, some of these board members want to change the way we vote. I will be going around with a petition later on to all the districts to try to get it put on the ballot instead of having this board override our rights on how to vote. Now, on my subject, I'm here to address the city council. Englewood High School has a holding pond where the baseball field is. All the mechanisms are froze up. It is a 100-year floodplain trap. We just been building a new holding pond down in Englewood in District 4. That's what this one was developed for. Who's in charge when we have the flood? There is no fencing around it. So when that fills up with millions of gallons, that was put in there and designed so that the apartment houses in this building right here doesn't get flooded. And all these apartment houses over here don't get flooded. Right there by Denny's, we got a big culvert that goes down, but that culvert will not handle a 100-year flood. Englewood is no longer taking care of that pond, of that, all that grass and area, because I keep hearing different stories as to why. The school district wanted to just take it over. They had a big event, a 7-on-7 event with 10 teams, and the grass field down there is a disaster. We have a flood. There's no way of restricting the kids walking down and stuff after the flood, and that pond is not designed now to drain properly. Who's in charge of draining it? Are we ready, city, for that emergency so our kids don't happen to get out of the house and go down there and fall in that pond? There's no way in God's world we could save their life as deep as that's going to be. And I'm addressing the school board tomorrow night on the very same issue, because there's no, as much as you say you're communicating back and forth, neither side has addressed it. Unfortunately, you just had a whole group in here that has studied some of the floodplains. I'd like to know if they talked about that. Thank you again for showing up, and don't be afraid to come in here and talk to this board. All right? Let's make it back to our board, our city. Any questions?
Gary, thank you very much for your time tonight. Member Wright has a question for you.
Okay, so we have the regular football field, and this is a subfield by Englewood High School?
It's all the grass area. You have the main stadium, and then you have a practice field that's artificial turf, and then the big pond underneath. Before these apartment houses were approved and stuff to be built, there was a big deal with the city working with the school district to create that as a major holding pond. There was steel gates built into all that would go ahead and absorb the initial thrust of a heavy rain, and then they would hold that and be able to release it in a controlled release so that it didn't come down here and wipe out the town. Well, the apartment houses put in here, if you'll notice at Denny's, we've got the big culvert, but we've also, it's a little bit lower. That's so when that culvert filled up and it couldn't take as much water,
Gary,
it would come over the top.
Sorry to cut you off. I think you answered the initial question.
Yeah, and it's on the north side of everything, correct?
It's the baseball field, all of the grass area down in the lower pond.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Gary, I see no further questions. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
All right, I think those are all our speakers. Stepping no one else online. All right, perfect. And with that, Mayor Pro Tem, you are giving the council response when you are ready.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you everyone for coming out tonight. Especially want to thank those of you who came out to speak in support of the South Broadway revitalization project. It's we don't always hear positive stuff, if positive feedback on some of the projects that we're working on. So it's really encouraging to hear that a lot of you are very supportive of this. And I just want to make sure that a lot of the things that you guys, ideas you suggested, I know a lot of them are already being considered, but I'm just going to read through everything I heard and make sure that if there's any new ideas or anything that it gets in, kind of gets in the record for staff to take a look at. So I heard more events specific to South Broadway and safety, streets and for both streets and the crosswalks, more bicycle accessibility, more pedestrian accessibility, traffic calming to slow the cars down, more third spaces, grow a community of businesses, make it more of a destination, safer to get around, focus on public transit, widening sidewalks, narrowing lanes, pop-up library, add housing redevelopment back into the project, housing affordability, more tree canopy, more neighborhood organization, more access to the train in Pirates Cove, activate green space that already exists, and creative funding sources for amenities. There's something some of you guys mentioned that didn't make it into my list. Please forward those to me in email. I want to make sure staff gets all those ideas down and we have a record of that going forward with the project. So thank you all for coming out and speaking to that. I'm not going to address every individual thing you said, but we're hearing you and we want to implement these things. I know there was some initial concern that maybe this wasn't something that Englewood wanted. I think we've heard loud and clear tonight that revitalizing South Broadway is something that the citizens want. For those a couple of people who object to some of what's going on with South Broadway, I'll address Judith Marienthal. Judith, I appreciate you coming and speaking online tonight if you're still on there. I appreciate you coming out to speak. I do think that what people are referring to when they talk about that part of South Broadway being dead is not particularly referring to the residents or anything like that. I think it's more referring to the fact that there are so many vacant buildings and even whole blocks that lack a lot of activation. And I know that's hard, that's a hard thing to say. This is my district, this is my portion of Broadway. But if we want to make Englewood better, we got to recognize what is there and what we need to work on. So I think that there is life there, but we want to pour more life into it. I'd love to see that whole area brought back to life. And then Kathleen Bailey, thanks for coming out and speaking tonight as well. I'd refer you to our current zoning map to see what, for clarity on what level of density is allowed in different areas. But I would say something that I think the map that you showed captures well is that the areas that are more vibrant have more density, need more density. I think we are not likely to see a long-term successful revitalization if we don't also include some housing along South Broadway. David, thanks for coming and speaking about the 5G thing again. And Gary Kozak, appreciate your comments about stormwater as well. And again, thank you all for coming out tonight.
Any further comments from? Go ahead, Member Russell.
I would like to do a couple of council requests. I do believe that Ms. Bailey asked 3 questions that she deserves an answer, and those questions came up before when we talked about this, about that 2017 plan. Is that done away with? Or I want an answer to those questions. So there's a council request on that. Then there also is a council request on what Mr. Kozak shared with us regarding the holding pond at Englewood High School. If the things that were shared tonight are true, I think that ought to be this city's #1 priority, because if we have a rainstorm that would inundate that area, it will impact us all the way down to the river, even through downtown Englewood. So we need to find out what's going on there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Russell. That's Hosanna Athletic Fields, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what perfect. Go ahead, Member Noonan-Camp.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to join the Mayor Pro Tem in saying thank you guys so much for coming out. It is a long night on a Monday night. Very grateful, though, for you engaging in this process, and for many of you who said you're already serving on committees in this project. I'm a very strong supporter of this project, so it's really encouraging to see you all here. And sometimes we hear from other residents who say, I don't think anyone cares about this, and so putting your voice to what you actually value in the city is really, really important, and so we're really grateful. And I am also grateful just for how many of you showed up in a really respectful and supportive way to also people who disagree with you, and thinking about the things that we love the most about Englewood is our diversity and how can we capture the disparate voices that we have and create something that works for all of us. So very grateful for the way you engaged, very excited that you're continuing to engage, and if I can be helpful, please let me know.
Thank you very much, Member Noonekamp. Yeah, I'll second that. Thank you very much for coming and speaking about what you want to see on South Broadway. I think Member Noonekamp and Mayor Pro Tem kind of listed a couple of things that that I wanted to say, but I think, Ryan, you were the one that kind of said it, that we may be seeing this as a cost. I think you might have said it, but no, I see this more as an investment for the area. Whitney, you have made an investment with your business, and for us not to reciprocate, and you telling the story of what the challenges are for your business really hit hard for me, because we
Mayor,
always hear one
I
aspect.
apologize, but I have a point of order. Councilman Anderson had response to public comment tonight. What we're doing right now is giving response to public comment.
Right, and so I just wanted, well, I appreciate that, Member Warden, yes. But thank you very much for everything that you guys have come and stated tonight. Thank you very much for your time. All right, everyone, appreciate that. Member Ward, you have stated that as well in the past, so I appreciate that. We are now moving on to consent agenda items. I believe there's only one item that was pulled tonight. That was 9B4. Any other items that need to be pulled tonight? If not, can I get a motion to approve 9B1, 2, and 3, 9C1, and 2?
So moved.
Thank you, Member Noonekamp, and second, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you very much. All right, can we please vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Noonekamp.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes.
Thank you. Moving on to 9B4. We have a question about the city sales tax code update. Member Russell, the question is coming from you.
Thank you, and I apologize for bringing you back again.
No worries.
I just still have some concerns about due process, and so I did send you 4 questions. How often do we fine a person $500 a day?
We apply that fine several times per month. I'm not going to say we do it day after day after day after day for one business, but we use that fine as a kind of an additional pleading, inducement, whatever you want to look at it, however you want to look at it, to please renew your license, please pay your tax debt if that's what you owe. So we do use that fine several times every month. We rarely use it in a serial manner day after day after day, because it just adds up so fast and it just becomes onerous, where their tax debt usually is already onerous. And so, but we use it on a regular basis, but we don't usually apply it several times in a row. So.
Okay, all right, I appreciate that. Thank you. Who makes the decisions under 4.4.20?
The Finance Department does, and Tax and Licensing Division, and that's the division that I'm a part of. Staff and I make those decisions when to apply. I think that authority, is really rests in 4.4.11 that says the finance director will assess this penalty and this interest. And then that section 4.4.20 says, in addition to all those other penalties, you can do this too. So our interpretation has always been it's the finance department that applies that penalty.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then, so the next question, who imposes the penalty? Is that the finance department?
Finance
as well?
staff, yeah, finance staff imposes the penalty.
Okay, and then does any of this relate to the state enforcement?
No, not directly. The state enforces their tax statute kind of in parallel to ours, and oftentimes the state is working on enforcement issues with Business A at the same time we are. But that $500 penalty, to my knowledge, has no connection to the state enforcement mechanisms.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then I do have one more question, and I thought I had asked this, but when I went back and watched the last meeting, I don't know if I asked this maybe during the study session, but it may have been a different ordinance that we were working on. What if a individual has a problem with the way you've decided and they don't think it's fair? What is their appeal process? I mean, can they appeal to municipal court or district court?
There is a protest process in the sales tax code for both licensing issues and for tax deficiencies that are identified and quantified and assessed. All of those decisions come with a 30-day pay or protest period where they can protest informally to the department. And we appoint a hearing officer, and it's all at the informal level. But our sales tax code also incorporates by reference the state statute that guides protests and how they're supposed to unfold and what the due process is. So the informal level first, and then they can go to either the Colorado Department of Revenue or district court. So there is due process. A lot of times when some of these penalties are being applied, all of those processes have run their course. The 30-day pay or protest period expired, and they didn't pay and they didn't protest, right? So then it becomes tax debt, and a collection process unfolds at that point.
And so who appoints the hearing officer in that step?
At the informal level, really the finance director would appoint a hearing officer. And our code isn't, to my knowledge, isn't specific about who that's supposed to be. It just calls for an informal hearing.
So if it's an informal hearing, would it probably be someone in the finance department?
It could be. I'm not a fan of that, frankly. Hearing officers that I've hired in the past at other cities, I ask them, if we got it wrong, tell us. And if they got it wrong, we'll go that way too. But I like even the informal level to be a legitimate, we're going to take a lot of time and resources to do this. I always tell the hearing officer, if we got it wrong, tell us that.
Okay. I think that answers all of my questions. Thank you very much. And I know you put a lot of work into this, and I do greatly appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Any further questions? If not, can I get a motion to approve 9B4?
Move to approve 9B4.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Noonan-Camp. Any further comments? Go ahead, Member Russell.
I know that staff has spent a lot of time on this, and I greatly appreciate that, but I still have some level of discomfort that we would be giving authority to someone who we do not know, who has not necessarily been vetted, even like, we have hearing officers for other situations that are, they're appointed by city council, but the city attorney vets them to a certain extent. But still, I think in this, in the ordinance before, there was the opportunity to go before a judge that is qualified to determine things, and that has totally been left out. And that is a little bit troubling to me. And so I know a lot of time has been spent on this, and maybe there's not that many people that would have problems, but I also think that we need to have somebody that we know, even in the informal process, because sometimes people are intimidated, and so that's really kind of where I'm at right now. I'm not going to support this.
Thank you, Member Russell. Member Wright.
Could we add to this ordinance that there is a list of qualified hearing officers, and then do a second reading on it? Whoever's qualified to answer that.
Kurt, actually, so just because you seem to be a little bit uneasy about that aspect of it, or at least have seen something different in other municipalities, anything you want to add on this? Because it does seem like there's at least some concern about who would be hearing out this.
It's been, to my knowledge, it's been this city's past practice to hire a neutral third party at the informal level. And that would be the process I would recommend to the finance director today if we had a protest. A neutral third party, and we even have budget for this, a small little tiny amount of budget for this, to pay a neutral third party with Colorado home rule sales tax knowledge, who's credible in that community to come and hear the protest at the local level. And I would also point out our code does say that after that level, the due process still exists. The Colorado Department of Revenue, the conferee, or go right to district court. The state statute that we incorporate by reference lays that out step by step. So they would, even after the informal level, which I would never recommend to the city, appoint me to be the, right? I take it more seriously than that, so.
Kurt, thank you very much or Mr. Osborne, thank you very much for that point.
So could that be added in? I mean, it's not in there currently that we would hire an independent.
No, the code doesn't require that.
So,
I'm sorry. Thank you, Member Russell. Member Wright?
I apologize. So could we add that to the code? How difficult would that be?
I always, when I think something's going to be easy, then it turns out to be hard.
I guess,
but it doesn't seem like that complex of a change.
okay, maybe the city attorney might be able to chime in for us.
Yes, I was actually just reviewing the red line of the changes because I didn't believe that this was something we had previously changed. I didn't think that there was a provision that had a judge presiding over this administrative hearing or appeal from the beginning. And so I was looking through that, and I don't see that was in our existing code. And perhaps Kurt could weigh in, but I believe our existing code requires it to be an administrative hearing as well. City Council has adopted a resolution designating our administrative hearing officers to be used. And so those are the only hearing officers that we use now. We don't appoint any city staff. We are all aligned in that we don't want city staff deciding if city staff did something correctly, because I think we're just asking for someone to think we were biased. And we don't want that. We want a fair and impartial decision maker. So we have an established process now where we only we only use those hearing officers that are designated by City Council. That said, we certainly could formalize it. We could put that in the ordinance. That would require another reading. If that's directed by City Council tonight and adopted by City Council tonight, then it would come back for a third reading.
Okay, and then may I?
Go ahead, Member Wright.
I'm sorry. And you said this would be an administrative hearing that specializes in financial type of stuff, opposed to what we use for somebody that cannot come into the library or some of the other type. I remember there was one here that we were sitting in together. I can't remember, city attorney, but different type. This would be more of a specialized hearing officer than.
We would seek a hearing officer, a neutral third party who's knowledgeable and has a lot of experience in Colorado home rule sales taxation.
Sales, thank you. Okay.
And having gone to district court in another city, it's so time consuming. I've developed a strong preference for dealing with substantive issues at the local level, at the informal level, with an expert neutral third party. It saves so much time and tears and effort. So
it makes sense to me.
Thank you. Thank you, Member Wright. Go ahead.
If I could just add, I just looked up resolution number 38 from 2024, where City Council designated those hearing officers. City Council did designate Kathy Haddock as a hearing officer to preside over tax matters.
Okay.
I thought I saw a light over on this side. Was I mistaken? Go ahead, Mayor.
I did. I wanted to. I'm wondering if I don't object to, adding codifying that this should be an external hearing officer But I'm wondering if that should be somewhere else in the code perhaps and applying to all matters involving city staff rather than just piecemealing it in each individual place where that comes up. That's the way I think I would prefer to do it. I'm wondering if, since this, I guess my feeling on this is I'd like to pass this ordinance and then revisit how we do the hearing officers as a broader secondary issue, since we, since we're not actually changing that provision within this code.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. City Attorney, anything to add on that or any questions?
No, I was actually just making notes to
Okay.
myself, but it's certainly something we could bring a separate ordinance to apply to all administrative hearings. We do have various sections of code and it is piecemeal. Whenever someone requests an administrative hearing, it's usually the city manager's office, city clerk's office, and myself trying to decide, oh, okay, who organizes it, who's supposed to pick them, who, because sometimes code says city clerk, sometimes it says city manager. So I really do like the idea of a consistent process for all administrative hearings, and I think this was a good issue to raise.
Okay. Thank you, City Attorney. Go ahead, Member Wright.
Member Ward's first.
Okay, go ahead, Member Ward.
Sounds like that might be a larger project. Is now an appropriate time to comment on the code in front of us, or?
Yes, it is.
I don't have a problem with the code as written. I have extensive or fairly extensive career experience with these administrative hearings. As far as my day job is concerned, and the references here, the structure of it, where the clerk assigns the hearing officer, the resolution we passed nominating hearing officers, and the fallback to the rules of civil procedure if either party is unsatisfied with the outcome of the administrative hearing, satisfies my need for due process relative to these tax matters. So I'm happy with the code as it's constructed.
Thank you, Member Ward. Member Wright.
Thank you. I completely agree with Mayor Pro Tem on, good golly, covering everything. My big question in the meantime of doing that, do we have any possible hearings coming up? Would be my only concern while we're working on covering everybody on this.
We've had no protests scheduled, or we've received no protests in response to audit assessments or any other tax matter.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you.
All right. Any further comments? We do have a first, we do have a second on the current council bill. All right, and with that, everyone, we will now vote.
Mayor Pro Tem Anderson.
Aye.
Member Nanenkamp.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Nay.
Member Ward.
Aye.
Member Wright.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 5 ayes and 1 nay.
Mr. Osborne, thank you very much for all the info and the answers to the questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, everyone, that now, there's no public hearing items tonight, no ordinance resolution motion, so we're just moving on to Mayor's Choice. Everyone, just a few things that I just wanted to highlight. So first off, in coordination with Swallow Hill, we'll be having Englewood this coming Saturday from 1 to 7, I believe, at the time, right behind basically the 3400 block of South Broadway. So looking forward to this first festival with Swallow Hill. We have about 5 bands, I believe, that are going to be in attendance that day. I will be at the event, so I'm hoping to see you all there. Just thank you very much to the DDA and Swallow Hill for the coordination, as well as all the member boards that have been engaged with this as well. I believe the CAC was part of this as well. So just really looking forward to it. Saturday after, which would be what, the 14th, is going to be the Base Logan opening day. Finally here, so I will be there. I plan on being there on the 14th. I believe we're starting at 10:30, so that's going to be a 2-hour event, but really looking forward to Base Logan in the opening day, so hope to see you all there as well. Also want to point out, we will be on vacation, or we're not going to be back until June 23rd, so no study sessions the next couple of Mondays. So just wanted to make you all aware that we'll be back on the 23rd of June. Just for members of council, we have a couple of study session items that evening, so we're hoping to start at 5:30 p.m. on the 23rd. So hopefully that's not too much of a conflict for you. It's a couple of Mondays out, so I think I should be okay, but just wanted to point that out to you, that we are going to be looking to do a 5:30 start. on June 23rd. Also, just want to wish everyone a happy Pride Month. Thank you very much. And anyone else for council member's choice? All right. See nothing for that. Oh, go ahead, Member Russell.
Actually, I do have one council request. I know that I did a council request on our policy to address flood debris in the city. And the last, I did get a call, the last significant rain event, and there was flooding at Bellevue Park. And apparently, we were pushing the debris back into the stream. One of the residents had contacted me and said that, and I think if that is true, then I think that maybe this council probably should talk about what our policy is, because when we put debris back into the stream, then that just creates more flooding downstream the next time. So that's my council request.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so it's just an additional council request on just the current process for flood debris.
Right, I had gotten the answer to that question, but also what we're doing currently in Bellevue Park.
Right,
In
okay.
the stream.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you. Member Russell, Mayor Pro Tem, go ahead.
I just wanted to respond to Member Ward's point of order earlier. I didn't object to it in the moment, but it's I do think that the presiding officer has the authority to recognize a speaker from among council, including himself. And I don't think there's anything in our policies that precludes that. Maybe I'm missing something that's in code or something, but in our policy manual, it says, while city council has no obligation to respond to a question asked during public comment, a council member may respond by making a request to staff during council members' choices described above as the or second as the designated responding council member after the close of all public comment, or if recognized and authorized by the presiding officer. I think that this does permit the, I like it that we try to keep it to one council member responding, but occasionally I think, I like having the flexibility of there's something I feel like needs a response that wasn't mentioned during the single council member. I like having that flexibility, would like to keep that.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Member Ward and then Member Russell.
I think we need to come into alignment. I'm perfectly willing to follow whatever rules are specified, but if everybody is going to respond to public comment, why do we name one person to respond to public comment? We just need to stop doing that if that's how we want to do it. I don't care what the policy is. I'm just trying to, my point of order was a reaction to what our traditional practice has been. There have been moments where I have asked for a personal privilege. I've made the motion. I've requested the right to speak to the mayor because my own personal conduct was being addressed. What I saw tonight was outside the scope of that. There was no council request being made relative to the the public comment. It was simply a secondary response to public comment, which in my opinion, based on what we have had as our practice in the past, is not appropriate for that time period.
Thank you very much, Member Ward. Member Russell, go ahead.
Thank you, and I appreciate Member Ward calling the point of order. I was getting a little bit frustrated myself in the fact that if we have designated one person and we can do that, it actually, and I appreciated just the way it was done. This council does have the authority to override the presiding member, but it would have been inappropriate for all of council to weigh in. And I agree that Member Ward stated very clearly what our policy is. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
I would just say that the way I've always seen it is we rotate one council member to make sure that there's one person whose job it is to make sure that everybody, that to the extent possible, the people who've come to spoke, they all get kind of recognized and responded to in some way. But we have, as long as I have been on council, we have allowed, and the policy manual explicitly states that, or if recognized and authorized by the presiding officer, council members may have just a little word of response that they want to follow up with. I think that's totally appropriate, and has been done that way for many years. I don't think there's any conflict between having one person provide a general overall response and then having other council members, if they want to say thank you to the citizens. I think that's totally appropriate and would like to continue to do it that way.
Member Noonan-Camp.
I'll just weigh in since I was one of the members who spoke and just say, I was not trying to give response or to be out of order. In my experience, the last 3.5 years on council, I have found that members have regularly been allowed to say thank you to the public who have shown up, and that was my intent. I did not mean to overstep any policy. I was not under the impression that I had. I think there's a difference between responding on substantive policy issues versus thanking people for coming and giving their time and engaging respectfully. So that was my intent.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Member Noonan-Camp, and thank you very much for the reminder, Member Ward, and council members that weighed in on the issue. City Manager.
Apologies, Mayor, but I'm still unclear. What is the policy?
No, I agree with you. Well, based on the policy, like what Mayor Pro Tem stated, or how he read it, does sound like it gives us the ability to provide a response to public comment. I actually feel more in line with your thinking, though. I do like the idea of just having a single member provide the response, with additional members jumping in to provide a follow-up in terms of council requests. How we've done that in the past. But I think that may be open. The way that I'm interpreting the statement that Mayor Pro Tem stated does sound like we had the ability to provide a response as well.
Is J4E in the policy manual. It allows for anyone to speak if recognized and authorized by the presiding officer in response to public
So
comment.
my preference would be to clean up the language of the council policy to limit the council response to just a single person. That would be my preference moving forward. So go ahead, Member Ward. You're still looking. Obviously, it's a discussion that we can have at a later point in terms of just cleaning up the language to make sure that we're all in alignment in terms of council policy, but go ahead.
I agree. I think the source of confusion here is the difference between what the written word allows and what our practice has traditionally been, and then what our practice has become over time as an extension of that. So as long as the body is in alignment, as long as I have 3 peers who agree or with a certain approach, and the public can know what to expect consistently, and the people who sit on this dais know what to expect consistently, and our staff knows what to expect consistently. And to the extent that Bob's rules allows a deviation from that policy, we handle it fairly and accurately and accordingly. I don't have any issue. What I have issue with right now is the sort of seeming confusion over what our practice is going to be. Because if I'm following one set of rules and another member of this body is operating under a different set of rules or a different understanding of what those rules mean, then that's a problem. So as long as we can normalize over what our practice is going to be, I'm happy. Whether whether it happens exactly how I think it should happen or not is not relevant. I just want to make sure the body has the same understanding of what's going to be happening from night to night, and that the application of that is consistent as possible.
Thank you, Member Ward. Do you feel that the language should be cleaned up to align with? Well, we'll have to just verify that 3 members agree with you as well. But do you feel that the language needs to be cleaned up a little bit in terms of how we respond to public comment?
Yeah, I think everyone knows that my approach to this has been traditionally stricter than certain other members. When I read the actual policy, I see Councilmember Anderson's interpretation as accurate, and I don't think he's wrong based on what the current policy is. As far as the cleanup is concerned, I think it would be helpful, but if the entire body wants to align over what's written in here now, and we don't have anything specific other than the presiding officer's decision on whether or not speaking is appropriate, then we can do it that way.
Yeah. Thank you, Member Ward. I'm in agreement with you. Like, my preference would be to not really. At some point, we do have to clean up the language. I would be in favor of just allowing one designated member of City Council to provide a response to public comments, with anybody else weighing in with any council requests that may have been missed. I would prefer to go down that route. If we need to make a change to the council policy in the near future, possibly for the election, in order to make sure that future councils see the wording similarly, I'd be in favor of that. So I don't think the change needs to be made in a study session in the next month or so, but just sometime in the calendar in the future. Anybody in disagreement with that? Go ahead, Mayor.
I am in a disagreement with that. I think we should keep the policy the way it is and have a single person respond, and then if occasionally somebody else wants to weigh in, I think that's fine. So I would not want to see any change to the policy.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Member Nunekamp.
I would just weigh in and say that I actually don't think this is like a widespread problem. This is not happening every week. This is a lot of other things on our agenda. I'm not sure this one rises to the level of something that I think we need to spend time on. I think we all know the policy, and I would say that I can point to multiple occasions where other members of council have said, thank you so much for being here, or added something, of an area of issue expertise. But I think we all know we have one response, and then occasionally there are side comments, but I don't think this is a significant enough issue that we need to spend more time talking about it, in my opinion.
Thank you, Member Nunekamp. Anyone else? Member Russell, go ahead.
I just want to weigh in that I think we should change it. And I don't think it's a significant policy, but I'm in favor of changing it.
Thank you. Member Wright, anything that you want to add, or? Perfect. All right. Well, actually, since we only have 6 tonight, would you want to change the wording in order to?
I would like to stick to one person giving comment, and then if someone needs to add a council request that the person speaking forgot, I would like that. And like Member Nunekamp said, on occasion, someone else, speaks in and says thank you or whatever. It's not a rampant thing, but I think we're good as we are. So I'm okay with that.
Okay. So I was going to say, I think that sides more with Mayor Pro Tem and with Member Nunekamp, but just not make it the habit of actually every member providing a response is what you're stating.
Correct.
You want to allow a little bit of flexibility in a response, but not to make it a habit. So basically that sounds to me like
it needs to be a very rare occasion. I don't want to see what we saw tonight every night, because I think it needs to be very rare. If it starts becoming a problem, then I think we really need to start addressing it then. So
thank you, Member Wright. Yeah, so we'll leave the wording as is and just try to limit multiple members from giving a response in the future. So.
Right, and I would ask that you be the one that
right.
controls that, and if you see it to be a problem, then it needs to be addressed.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Member Wright. Anyone else for council members' choice? If not, City Manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of things coming up that want the public and you all to know about. First of all, we are kicking off Neighborhood Nights. So on June 4th at Jason Park, June 11th, Romans Park, June 25th, Northwest Greenbelt, July 9th, Bellevue Park, the 16th of July, Cushing Park, July 30th, Centennial, August 6th, Bates Logan, and August 20th, Duncan Park. So full schedule of neighborhood nights coming up. We hope that all of you can be there. Staff also wanted me to ask you all if you would like to have a booth at neighborhood nights that's kind of set up. If there would be, we would just need one person probably to sign up, or two if you wanted to sign up to staff the booth. So if you are interested in that, okay, I'm getting one no, one smile.
No, I will just stop by the nights that I'm able to make it to the neighborhood.
Okay,
nights, so
okay.
that would be
Well, we'd
fine.
love to have you, but we just wanted to make sure you knew that if you wanted to have a booth, we could do that. And by booth, I just mean a table. The next thing I want to mention is Kid Stage. Kid Stage is going to be kind of a new thing that we're doing. We've always done movies in the park, but we're really trying to kind of beef that up. And the first one of those is going to be Saturday, June 7th. That'll be in Bellevue Park. We're going to have a meet and greet at the Farm and Train with the animals, enjoy a musical show by Jen Cleary, followed by the showing of The Emperor's New Groove. On Friday, August 1st, here at the Civic Center, we will have another movie, I think in the amphitheater. Saturday, August 16th at Bates Logan, and Saturday, September 6th at Duncan Park. And that's going to be performances by Polynesian dancers and a showing of Moana. Is that the right way you say that movie? Moana. Don't have kids. So performances are going to start at 6 p.m. and then movies start at dusk after each performance. So really excited about all the events. Of course, we got block party and some of the bigger events sprinkled in there. But these regularly occurring events, we would love to see as many residents and you all at to meet and greet one another. I'm glad to answer any questions you may have about that or any other topics.
Thank you very much, City Manager Lewis. There's a lot of events. You left out First Friday for Pets coming up, and then there's second Saturdays with the Art Walk. So but there's a lot.
Thank
is
you,
all
Mayor.
I'm saying. But yes, thank you very much, City Manager. With that, everyone, we are now adjourned. We'll see you all in about 3 weeks, or maybe at some of the events. Have a good evening, everyone. Friday, Saturday,